Everyone, I am back with another solo. This one I'm going to say is an AI. It's not really an automa. It doesn't use a deck. It uses a score sheet that will be on BGG soon so that you can print that out. I've laminated mine as I've done my normal sheets too, because this is a roll and write or flip and write or whatever you want to call it. I just wanted to say thank you to Mac, who's in the solo Facebook group that I'm in. He tagged me in a post last week and said, hey Mark, you should check out this game. It's called Hadrian's Wall. It's currently has only a beat your high score mode, but maybe there's something you can do about that. So I looked into it, and it happened to be at my local game store, and I picked it up and started to work on how we could turn this beat your high score mode into having an opponent. And so that's what I've done here. So let's go ahead and walk through how it works. So in a game of Hadrian's Wall versus a solo opponent, by the way, the solo opponent that you are playing is Hadrian. So you are trying to have a better wall section than he does. You will be taking your turn just like in a normal multiplayer game. But once you have taken all your actions, you are going to go ahead and go to the AI. The AI's turn consists of 3 phases. It's going to advance resources and attribute tracks. You then have a chance to sabotage Hadrian's wall levels to make yours look better. And then thirdly, the picks are going to attack just like in a normal multiplayer game. By the way, this is how you set up. You're going to have your 2-player boards. You're going to have the solo player board. You're going to have the solo deck, which is just the 12 cards from an unused player color. You're going to go ahead and flip over 2 for the first round. You're going to go ahead and flip over the top card of the fate deck, just like you would in a multiplayer game. And you're also going to have your player deck over here with your 2 starting player cards that you're going to have to choose from. During setup, you also need to decide what difficulty do you want to play on: easy, medium, or hard. If you play on easy, you need to look at the cohort track as well as the attribute track and mark off any green boxes. So in this case, you're just going to mark off these 8 green boxes down here because there's none on the cohort track. If you're playing on medium, you need to mark off all the yellow and green boxes. So there's one here, here, and here, as well as these 12 boxes right there. And if you're playing on hard, you're going to mark off all red, yellow, and green boxes. So these 16 as well as these 6. At the end of the game, the AI will score path card points based off what difficulty you are playing. If playing on easy, they're going to score 6. If playing on medium, 12, and hard, 18. So speaking of the 2-player cards you're going to have to choose from, just like in a multiplayer game, you need to choose one of these cards that are going to go for in-the-game scoring. So let's go ahead and say that I chose the Forager. Slide that under here. And then the other card that you don't use, you're going to gain the resources per usual. And then you could have the opportunity to use this later on your turn for the shape if you're doing the patrician action. And then what I do after I've collected my resources, I go ahead and place this to the right of the 2 AI player cards, because these 3 shapes showing are going to be important when we go to phase 2 of the AI's turn. So during the first phase of the AI's turn, you're going to look at the top card of the fate deck that's currently showing. That might not be the one that you started with at the beginning of the round, in case you used an action, a gladiator action or a possible trade action to flip over more cards from the fate deck. And you could potentially use this to your advantage if you see resources out there that you don't want the AI to gain, or you need a certain amount of a specific color to hit a certain spot on the track. So you can manipulate that a little bit by taking actions earlier in the round so that the fate card gets changed. But whatever, you're not flipping over a new one at the start of the AI's turn. Whatever is currently showing, you're going to go ahead and take a look at that. And you're going to look at these resources showing on the card. Now, if you wanted to, you could grab the resources from the supply and place them here, but you're going to use these so fast that there's really no point. So I just go from left to right and just resolve each one. This is a black worker. There are 2 tracks that you can start filling in for the black worker. You can fill on this track or this track. You can fill on either track, but you must fill from the left to the right. So whatever is currently showing. So if you fill this empty square, nothing happens. The AI does not gain anything. It does not advance any other tracks. So if you use the black worker to mark off this red symbol, that symbol stands for the cohorts. The AI gets to mark off the next cohort available at the lowest track, the lowest marked up track. So the left cohort has 3 defense, the middle one has 2, and the right has 2. So it's going to try to evenly distribute all of these upgrades. So instead of going here, because that has 3, it will then try to either hit this one with 2 or this one with a 2. It's going to look for the lowest. And since both of these are tied, it's going to go from left to right. So always resolve tied cohorts from left to right. So for this black worker, if you marked off this, then looking here, you would simply mark off this. And now this one has 3 defense. And completed cohorts are going to score 4 points for each section at the end of the game. So what other symbols can you mark off on this resource track? Well, you can mark off the white squares, which do nothing, which we've talked about. You can mark off the red symbol, which is the cohorts, which we just talked about. You're going to see symbols for renown, piety, valor, and discipline up here as well. You're going to see the remove disdain symbol, which is the yellow thumbs up sign. And you're going to see this new symbol that is a W with parentheses around it. And we will go over that here in a little bit once we understand how the sabotaging the wall levels work. So once you resolved each resource, so I would mark off 1 black, I would mark off 2 blues, and it can be from either track. It just has to go from left to right. I would mark off 2 purples, 1 yellow, and 2 gray resources. I would like to note here that at any time during your turn, if you decided to use the patrician action where you draw the shape and you used one of the AI's shapes, you would place this near the AI's area and it would use this resource now. If you also traded with the AI and you gave it a resource, it would also get to use that resource and mark the resource track 1 space. Just like if it showed 3 resources here. So the AI will spend those resources to move up those tracks. After you've resolved all the resources and moved up any attribute tracks or upgraded the cohorts, then it's time to move to phase 2 of the AI's turn, where it will be your turn to sabotage the wall levels of Hadrian. You're going to look at the 2 AI player cards that were flipped over, as well as the player card that you did not use for your end game, and you're going to look at the 3 shapes. You need to choose 2 of these shapes, and you can't use the same shape twice, the same card twice. You can use the same shape, like if this shape had been this, you can use both of these cards, even though they have the same shape. You just can't use the same card twice. But you have to look at these 3 shapes, and you need to draw 2 of them into this wall levels section. Your first shape you draw has to have at least 1 square touching the very bottom row. For this 4, I could draw it 1, 2, 3, 4. I could draw it 1, 2, 3, 4. As long as 1 shape, 1 square on the bottom row is filled in, you're good. The shape can be flipped and mirrored just like in a multiplayer game. After you've drawn your first shape, every other shape has to touch at least 1 previously filled in square. So for an example, let's say I did this shape and I went 1, 2, 3, 4. So that shape is now, I can no longer use it. So now these are my 2 available shapes to use. I could use this shape and I could go 1, 2, 3, 4. Or if I didn't want to do that, I could have gone up here and gone 1, 2, 3, 4. As long as 1 side is touching another previously drawn in filled in square, you're good. You just can't go, like let's say it's now my turn. I go 1, 2, 3, 4. This doesn't touch any orthogonally adjacent previously filled in squares. So it is orthogonal. It is not diagonal, so you cannot, this would not be a legal placement. And your objective is to fill in as much of this tower, or to sabotage this wall, as much as you can. So at the end of the game, you have filled in all of the different levels. The AI will score for any incomplete, completely filled in level. So this level 1, if there was any blank squares, any open squares, it would score 5 points. For this level 2, if there was any open squares, it would score 8 points. And for this section, any open squares, it would score 10 points. So in this situation, at the end of the game, it would score just 10 points because I only had one open square here. So that is where these little W's come in handy. When you mark off a W, you get to fill in one square on the wall levels right then and there. You cannot save it, so you'll actually be you'll be filling in one square during the phase 1, the resource phase. You kind of have to plan out, what am I going to be filling in when it comes to phase 2, because you cannot save that for phase 2. If you mark off a W during phase 1, you immediately have to fill in one square over here. It has to abide by all the rules we just talked about. It has to touch another previously filled in square. In the event that you go to draw your second shape, let's say this is what my wall looked like, and these are the two shapes I have, and I can't fit any of these here. That second shape, or however many shapes you can't fit, are just forfeited. You don't get to fill in one square. It's just a forfeited shape, and you move on. At the end of the game, you're going to go ahead and start scoring for the AI. And once again, the end of the game is triggered just like it is in a multiplayer at the end of the 6th round. So first off, you're going to look at the AI's completed chords. So there's one section here, 2 sections here, 3 sections there. So you're going to look for each section. If it's completely filled in, it's going to score 4 points per section. So this section would score 4, this section would score 4. This section would not score 4 because there's an open square here, so it would be 8 points here. Then you're going to look for wall levels. You're looking for empty squares. So there's none in level 1, so it does not score 5 points. There's none in level 2, it does not score 8 points. But level 3, you did have 1, so it does score 10 points. For the 4 attribute tracks, you're just going to look to see how far they've moved along. So for renown, piety, and valor, in this case, they would score 8 points each, and for discipline, they would score 7. You will notice that a slight change from the normal player board is that after 15, the AI score moves up, so the further it moves along this track, the more points it's going to score. So that's the only change from the multiplayer game, is after the landmark, but you'll put those scores here. And then for path cards, you're going to say, are you playing on easy, medium, or hard? You're either going to score 6, 12, or 18 points. Disdain is the same way as in a multiplayer game. Right now, it has 3 disdain, so that would be -5 points. At that point, you would total up the points and see who has more. Ties are broken just like they are in a multiplayer game. I don't think I ever talked about the hand, maybe I did, but the yellow hand, the remove disdain, when you cross that out, if there is no disdain to remove, because they either have none or you've already filled in all the circles for their disdain, then that benefit is just lost on the AI. And that's it. That's how you play a Hadrian's Wall against a solo opponent, giving you a win-loss variant to this fantastically designed game by Bobby Hill. I normally produce a full playthrough of the variants I create, but with this game being so solo driven on these sheets, I don't think I'm going to do that this time. I think people will be able to pick it up without having to watch a full playthrough of seeing it played. If you enjoyed this and you want to see more of the automas I've designed, then feel free to look in the description for a BGG Geek List link. It has automas for parks with the Nightfall expansion, Sagrada, Splendor, Century Spice Road. Canvas, which is popular, that was a beat your high score mode, and I turned that into a win-loss condition. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below or post it on the files page. If you don't know where to look for this AI, I will post a link to that in this description as well. Under the geek list, it will be all my AIs and automas are on that geek list. But these files will be on the BGG page in the files section of Hadrian's Wall, so you can find it there. With that, happy gaming, and I hope you enjoy it.